Anyways, I already stole 2 minutes from Nick's time. You're not here to hear from me. You're here to hear from Nick. Now, this particular topic is one that's very close to my heart. I do quite a bit of pre-sales for customers here in North America, and Plan Designer has been a an amazing tool for what I do. Sometimes I get an email in the morning where people will say, "Hey, there is this customer that has this idea. Can we get something done by the end of the afternoon and present it?" So I don't think anybody would be able to do a presentation like this without the use of AI or Plan Designer. And so it's been an amazing tool in our toolbox, and I'm excited to learn it from none other than the power lifter, Nick Doelman. So thank you so much, Nick, for donating your time, and the floor is yours.
Perfect. So I will share my screen. I'm going to choose window. Let's choose this one. And I'm just going to move you guys. I got a new screen configuration, so I'm still trying to navigate my way a little bit. So just bear with me as and Teams is being Teams, as it does. Okay. All right, this will be fine. You guys see my screen okay?
Yeah.
All right, got a thumbs up from Victor. Perfect. Alrighty, so yeah, so basically, as you guys know, this is the Zero to Hero. Victor did some nice AI and got us all dressed up because I think most of us are typically t-shirt and hoodie people, and that's sort of how things go, how things roll. Just a little bit about myself in case you guys don't know me. My name is Nick Doelman. I am a Microsoft MVP since 2017 with a short break. I spent some time at Microsoft. So I kind of know how the sausage is made a little bit there. I kind of I work for myself. I'm a freelancer, so I can call myself whatever I want. It's usually Power Platform Specialist. I've been using the tag AI Explorer a little bit because I think, like all of us, we're exploring the new tools, we're exploring the new technology. I don't think anybody's truly an expert in any of this. We have our expertise in certain areas, but it's evolving so fast. I think we're all learning and students of this, and I'm not sure anybody's truly could call themselves a master in AI, because if they do one week, by next week their knowledge is outdated and things have changed. I also do a podcast, so do check that out if you get the opportunity. For those of you who are in the Vancouver area or would love to visit Vancouver, and Victor might have talked about this before, is the Canadian Power Platform Summit. It's happening on March 20th, 21st in Vancouver. We have some amazing workshops and an event on the Saturday. The event is free, so you can't beat the price. You just have to get yourself to Vancouver, and we have, oh man, so like we talk about amazing speakers. We're able to pull in a lot of speakers that are on their way to MVP Summit and kind of convince them to make a stop in Vancouver. Plus, we have some new and up and coming speakers. So a lot of great community content happening there, on topics kind of, Copilot, Power Apps, Flow, ALM, and all that sorts of things. So definitely check that out. I do want to point that out. So anyways, enough about me. Let's actually talk about Plan Designer, or it's sometimes people refer to it plans, because Microsoft, in case you didn't know, they do like to change the name of things from time to time. So the last we asked, and I did a presentation with Eliza Benitez. For some of you who might know, she works for the Microsoft Advocate team. We checked with the product team, and they said, no, the tool itself is called Plan Designer, but you create plans. If you read the documentation now, if I actually look at the documentation, it says calling it plans this week. Although you look in the URL, it still says Plan Designer. And then, so anyways, I'm probably going to refer to it Plan Designer as I go through this, but you guys all know what I'm talking about. So let's not really get hung up on the naming conventions of this. So basically, what I really want to talk about today is what we want to do is we want to build a business application. We want to build it fairly rapidly. And it's great. I can go into Plan Designer here, and right away, if I go to the home page for Power Apps, right away I have this plan, and I can just describe my business problem and just go in and build something. As tempting as that is, and maybe for proof of concept or just playing around, this is all good. Do it on a dev environment, play with a few ideas. But if you're getting into a position where you actually need to build a real business solution, I wouldn't start here. And there's a couple reasons for that. This is good. It can help you formulate things, but it immediately begins to go through the whole process of building out where you actually want to sit back a little bit and collect your assets, collect the information. And this little plus button here where you can begin to add assets, it only will allow you to pick up images, which is great. But probably most of you who have worked with clients realize that they don't just give you screenshots. They give you documents, they give you user manuals, there's PDFs. You have meetings, you have tons of Teams meetings working through collecting those requirements from your customers. And to collect all of this information, you want to collect all this, and it's great to use an AI tool, but Plan Designer really doesn't do a great job of collecting that. So what do? I go to something like M365 Notebooks. But before we dive into that, here's this scenario. So as Victor mentioned, I am a power lifter. I'm a competitive power lifter. I do train about 3 to 4 times a week. I go to the gym. The plan that I've been given is basically I get a spreadsheet like this. I get this once a week. My coach, he's a personal trainer. He's been a strength and conditioning coach. He's really big in this thing called high rocks right now. For those of you who might know that, I'm a power lifter, so I lift a lot of weights. He has a spreadsheet, and every week he adds a new worksheet. So here is I went to Worlds last fall. We're now preparing for Nationals, which is coming up in a few weeks. So every week he ends, basically copies the worksheet and then adjusts the numbers. So I see here is the for this, I have day 1 to 3. I need to do some bench. I need to do some high bar squats. He gives me the reps. He gives me the sets. He gives me the weights. It's a percentage of what my 1 RM max is, total tonnage. So there's a lot of details in here. I really just focus on the exercise, the reps and the sets and the weights. I like to kind of put my brain on autopilot. I go in the gym, but what I have to do first off, he spends a lot of time working on these spreadsheets. He has multiple clients that he has all these different workbooks for. And then I go in, I usually print this out. So I have a paper version of this because to look at an Excel sheet on a phone, like it's really hard. So, so basically, I thought, you know what, it'd be really cool to build a business application for my coach, for Chris, so he can actually begin to plan out these things a little bit better, be able to work with it. And also for me to be able to go in and view these things through a portal or something. And then if he has the one-on-one clients, maybe a Canvas app that he can kind of go in and make adjustments on the fly kind of thing. So that being said, do we just take this sheet and upload it to Plan Designer? Well, we can't do that because first off, it's an Excel sheet. Yes, I can take a screenshot of it, but there's a lot of other data in here that it can go through. So what I've done is I've created an M365 notebook. So I'm not sure for those of you, this is within the paid version of M365 Copilot. Of course, Google Notebook LM has notebooks. ChatGPT has projects. Claude has, I think, projects as well. So most AI tools have this. What I like about this is because I'm using the M365 work, this is all this information I'm uploading is going to stay within my own environment. So basically, I created a brand new notebook. I've called it Training Planner. You see here, I have a bunch of other notebooks as well. And here I can begin to add all of my other references. So I can add things like OneNote notebooks, PDFs, PowerPoint presentations. I have added that Excel sheet. But maybe if I sat down with Chris and we had a Teams meeting, I could upload those transcripts to the Teams meeting. If we started doing a whiteboard session, I could maybe take a picture of that and throw that in. So going through that regular process of collecting the requirements that you might do as solution architects is really kind of the same thing, but now we're beginning to collect it and we're beginning to put it into a notebook. The other thing that I do too is I put in something called system prompts. Now, I'm not sure if any of you have experience with system prompts, but basically this is where you kind of define the parameters around a particular thing. So I do have a system prompt for a Power Platform Meta Architect. So basically it's for solution architecting. very much like any other prompt. I'm giving it a role, the mission, engagement principles, the required outputs for the idea of creating something called a product requirements document or a project requirements document. You might call it a vision document. You might call it a design document, a spec, all of these things. So I have some of these, so I'll load that into my notebook as well. I might load other things. I have a master AI prompt that really describes the way I work. I also have something called a writing style. This is more if I'm creating social media posts or doing some kind of writing that helps me with that. So I have these different system prompts that I might add. So I'll load the appropriate one into my notebook. And then from there, I want to go through and begin to kind of work with this information to extract my requirements. So I did have my a previous chat here. Yeah, let's take a look at my chats. Um, so at this point, I haven't gone to Plan Designer yet, but what I want to do is once I've collected all of this information, I want to go through and begin to isolate it down, make sure we're not leaving any stone unturned, and as we design our particular solution. So first off, I actually, in terms of prompting, I don't think I need to go through a kind of a prompt engineering course, but a very quick 20-second version of it. When you're doing a prompt like this, you want to kind of give the role, and that's people kind of question that, but actually, if you specify the role of what you want your Copilot to be, it's very helpful in terms of it finding information during researching. It begins to funnel down and give you more specific information than just being generic. So here I said you're a Power Platform specialist as outlined in the attached system prompt. So that is the design metadata I've added along that. Working alongside a personal trainer who prepares workout sessions for their clients. So again, giving that a little bit of a context, knowing where it's coming from. I have the context here. It is kind of jammed together, so I will try to highlight this. The context, the personal trainer would like a system. Well, I'd like my personal trainer. Anyways, doesn't really matter. Would like to have a system to prepare training sessions for their clients. I did note here to be stored as contacts in Dataverse. We can give explicit instructions to our prompt to make sure kind of steer it in the right direction. There's nothing wrong with that. If we know better, like ultimately we're in charge. So asking AI to do something, you're going to want to make sure you give it as much information as possible, or even direct it where you feel this is how I want it done. And then I would basically said system should have a library of exercises combined into training sessions that have set of exercises with sets, rep, weight, time, do, and basically setting up a whole training program. The other thing here is I have the command in the prompt, and basically I'm telling it, now that I've given it the role, I've given it the context, here's the command that I want you to do. I want you to develop a project requirements document, a parity using Power Platform to build this system. Use the attached system prompt to help to ensure it is well architected. And then finally, I say the format, the PRD should be human readable, because you can create things that are more AI readable. So basically, I kicked this prompt off. It basically worked on it for a while. It looked at the documents that I applied to it. Could be the same for you, the Teams meetings, the images, the whole bit kind of goes through this. And then finally, after a few minutes, it created this project requirements document. It gave me a solution overview. It gave me the user and experiences, the admin, the data model about the different tables that we want it to have, some additional data here, the application and interfaces. It specified model-driven app. It specified a Power Pages portal. It gave me the idea of an optional Canvas app, some of the business logic that we would use Power Automate for, maybe even plugins, that kind of thing. Some other calculations that we want. Even talked about providing some agents, some Copilot in here. So like a trainer assistance, a client assistance. So if I can going through and working, I can actually ask the agent some specific questions and it can go out and get some information for me around the workout. I did talk about in my system prompt, I talked about security and governance. So it does take, things like the security model. As we look in Plan Designer, we do see that some of this stuff doesn't exist, but this is good from the overall process of building that solution. We talked about some data governance about, the different, dev, test, prod, those types of things. Again, not necessarily related to Plan Designer, but just good. The environment strategy, some integrations, talked about non-functional requirements, the scope of the MVP, meaning the minimal viable product. This is the basics, what we're going to be creating. And then basically some future roadmap items that we might want to add down the road. Some other questions that it could ask, gave me some risks as well. And again, these types of things came from my system prompt. You remember most Copilots or ChatGPT or Claude, they're very positive. They're like cheerleaders. So you sometimes have to be explicit to challenge you on some of these assumptions to kind of bring out the risk. Like, don't be so nice. Give me the hard, honest truth. That's what I want. And so finally it gone through, and of course I'd probably reiterate on this a few times in an actual project. Here we're just kind of going through more for the demo. And then of course it can do a bunch of things, but basically here I want it to create a AI assisted development prompt. So generate the AI assisted development prompt. Basically what I'm saying is give me the prompt to give to Plan Designer. So basically, it's going through all this information and creating the prompts. So basically, I'm using prompts to create prompts. You can start somewhere, but of course, using AI to your best of your abilities here. So finally, I kind of gone through and it's given me this full-on prompt. So what I would do is it kind of breaks down a whole whack of things here. I'm just going to go through and I'm going to copy it. Of course, it can keep doing other things. So at this point, I know I summarized this in like a few minutes, but probably for me, if in terms of the role of a solution architect, I would probably spend probably hours here reiterating, trying to get that information. But we're talking about hours. As a solution architect on building a system, I probably spend days on this before collecting all the information, reading all my notes, trying to, extrapolate what's this, trying to make sure there are any pitfalls, anything I need to be worried about. This is the great thing about um, the, building some of these systems or using AI to do this is we're collecting that information. And then with that product requirements document, yes, I use it to create the prompt. But what I could also do is I could print that off. I could share that with my trainer, Chris. I could say, hey, this is the system we're going to build. Do you agree with this? Does this make sense to you? Or I could begin to share that with some other developers to make sure get their feedback on and then a good plan in place even before we get to build something. As most of you know, if you're solution architects or makers, the more you plan ahead, the better your system will probably be and the happier your customer will be. Thankfully, the AI, we can really shorten the window on that to be able to do the fun stuff like building the actual app. And we're going to get to that next. So anyways, I've gotten my prompt now. Now I'm going to go into Power Apps. Now, even before I do this, a couple quick other things. I've created a zero to hero dev environment. This is where I'm going to be building my development system or proof of concept. This is a clean environment. Do not, and I'm going to repeat this again, do not do this in your prod environments. Please, please spin up a dev environment, spin up a sandbox environment, keep your production locked down and away from doing any of this kind of stuff. The other thing that I do as well, even though Plan Designer will do this, is did create a solution. I just called it Workout Planner. I also created a publisher along that, so it has the proper prefix. And then the other thing too is I set that to be the preferred solution. So these are relatively new things. If you don't know what solutions are, definitely read the documentation on that. Solutions are really a container to hold all the assets you're building, and it just makes your ALM easier. So you're able to take that solution, deploy it to your test and eventually to your production environments. Having the proper publisher means you have the proper prefix, so you know that this is all part of that package solution. And then making that the current preferred solution, meaning if you go into some other tools like here, if I decide to go in tables or create some other prompts or functions, all of this will be in my current preferred solution as opposed to just in the default solution where I'd have to add it later and it might have a weird little prefix kind of thing. So do sort of get yourself a little bit familiar with solutions if you don't already. So once we have all that information, now we can go into plans. So here I'm going to go in and I'm going to describe my business problem. So at this point, this is where I'm going to paste in that prompt that I got generated out of M365 Copilot or out of the other tool you got. And now I'm going to hit generate. Now, what this is going to do, it's going to start to go through, it's going to run a series of agents. So the very first agent it's running is called the requirements agent. And we see here that we have 4 agents. There are, I think, 2 more coming as well. I believe, I'm not sure how much I'm supposed to say in this, but right now we have 4 agents that are doing this. First one is the requirements agent, and basically it's created the requirements, user requirements section. How does it look? So let's take a look at it. It's broken it up into personas. That's always good. It's created user stories. As a user, I need to, and kind of goes through all these things. So again, that's something you can verify with your customer or your project team to make sure that you're on the right track. We talked about the client, we talked about the administrator. So it came up with 3 user personas. That's pretty good. Again, I'm just going to hit looks good for now, but probably again, if this was a real project, I'd hit that edit and we begin to reiterate again, kind of going through the process and working with AI and not just blindly letting AI do it. So that being said, let's just let AI blindly go do this for the demo itself. I'm just going to say it looks good. And now it's going to move on to the process agent. So it's moving on to that next agent that's built in a Plan Designer. And that process agent is going to kind of define what those workflows are, whether they're manual or whether we want something we might want to automate in the future. It is pretty cool because this is something that I think gets missed on a lot of projects. Sometimes we're so focused on building the system, concerned about the data, what's going to be stored, we forget about the user journey. How is the user going to work with this? What do they need to do? What are the extra steps they might need to do? What steps are we trying to save? What can be automated? So there's a lot of things that's happening here. It's still going through generating that process. I'm just going to minimize that and move this over a little bit. Let's just shrink it down just a tad here. But basically, we see here it's going through the training program design and management process. It's working on that. I can just click on view the process. It's got a few others, client training session, system administration, and about the user personas it's affecting. I can take a look at that process, and it basically gives me like a sort of a flow chart of, I'm just going to move this to the side a little bit here. So basically all the things that are happening. So again, you can sit with your client to make sure that what they're doing day to day, some of the manual stuff they're doing, that they're capturing everything. We're capturing all the steps that's going to happen about the different things. Personal trainer assigns training programs to clients. System creates the client's program assignment record, going through a whole bunch of different processes here. And this is also good for documentation and troubleshooting, to understand how your whole system's working. So again, probably hit the edit, do some reiterations to kind of get you to a point where you kind of are comfortable with where your processes are at. So again, I'm just going to hit looks good. And now the data agent is now kicked in. So our next agent, we're moving on to the data agent here. And what that's doing is it is beginning to define the data model. Now, to me, this is probably one of the most important aspects of any Power Platform project is getting the data model right. If you don't get the data model right here, for those of you who've worked in Power Platform projects before, you probably realize, yikes, you could really paint yourself into a corner. You could run into security issues, sometimes performance issues. So there's a lot to consider when actually using the data model, designing that. Thankfully, Plan Designer does help you out a little bit. It's broken out by here. I'm going to do a table with exercises, table with training sessions, the session exercise, which is kind of the tying the exercise to the training session because that's an instant in time. Overall training program, the client. So it looks like it is creating some pretty interesting tables. That all looks good. And then again, what I could do is I could go and edit. Now it says the tables will be saved in a new solution. I want to change that solution. I want to make sure that it's being saved into my existing workout planner solution. So I've done that as opposed to a new solution. So I'm just going to change that around. So again, shows you some of the flexibility that that can do. So we've done that. It's going to be saved in the workout planner solution. I could still go through and edit a few things. I could replace it. I could do the edit. I could remove it from the plan if I think, no, we don't need that table. It is interesting that it didn't pick out for my client. Assigns training programs to clients. What I'd want to do, no, I think that's okay. Let me just sort of see what it's going to do here. So actually I've hit the edit button, and what's cool about this is it actually gives you an ERD diagram. Now, I know when this particular user interface came out, that it was kind of met with some good fanfare. Oh, great, in Dataverse, we can do an ERD diagram. It is great. I'm pretty excited. Existed in Access 97, which is like over 20 years ago, but hey, doesn't really matter. So basically here I'm actually going through, but you know what? I think what I actually want to do, it's actually looks like it's hard coded a few things. Plan Designer is supposed to understand the common data model, meaning all of those tables that are in Dataverse that exist already. Sometimes it kind of misses out. So what I'm going to do here is, excuse me, I'm going to add an existing table. I'm going to add the out-of-the-box contact table. Instead, let's just add that into our diagram here. So this is here, and then basically what I'm going to do is going to remove that relationship between here. I'm going to remove this table completely. Maybe I don't actually know. Sorry, I don't want to do that. I'm going to move it back. Actually, it doesn't really matter. It's about because I have the assignment date. Actually, again, no, I don't really care about that. So I'm just going to remove that completely. Yes. And I'm going to add the contact here. And then I'm going to link the contact to the training program. So we would do that. We want to do a one-to-many. A contact could have many training programs. So one contact, too many training programs. So again, this is just regular Dataverse relationships, which you've probably done, maybe some of you've done 100 times before. We definitely need this to be required. We can't have a training program without a client. We can look at some other options here in terms of the relationship names, the schema names. I'm okay with all of this. And then we hit done. And we got this relationship here. So we actually have a pretty nice ERD diagram of sorts. So that's all cool. And what I would probably do is go through each of these tables to make sure it makes sense, to make sure what the different values are. Now, one thing that Plan Designer doesn't do necessarily well is global option sets. It will do local option sets. Doesn't do new things like prompt columns or formula fields. That's not quite there yet. So some of these things you'd have to manually add yourself. A couple different ways we could do that. So let's just take a look at the exercise table. I just go view data. And what I could do here is I could add a new column and specify what I want it to be. So you see here the choice, it's just a local choice. I kind of want it to be global. And then the other thing too is it does create some sample data, which is also pretty cool because creating sample data has always been a real pain in the butt for me to go through and add all these things. And of course, some of your systems are probably filled with Simpsons characters or those types of things. So anyways, we have some sample data here. That's all good. Now that's one way I could do it. I could just, like I said, go add a new column. But what I could do is I could even go here in Copilot, and if I'm more lazy, and I could say something like, and I'm going to try the speech recognition. So I'm going to go, I think it's Alt H. Yes. So that's there. This might not work. Oh yeah, listening. Oh yeah, let's back that up a little bit. So this is how I begin to use Copilot quite a bit. So let's just click here. Create a option set for difficulty. So I've done this, and okay, this is why voice is a little tricky still. Let's just do that. And then basically I'm now going through and I'm talking to Copilot and I'm getting it to do some of this for me. And it's basically added a new option set column to the exercise and it's updated the rows. That's perfect. I can always backtrack on that. This is good. Yeah, I don't want to send, I could submit feedback for Microsoft. But yeah, so we've done that. And so we've gone through, we've added the difficulty here. We see that in the table. Let me just zoom out a little bit. So again, in Plan Designer, this is probably where I would spend a huge amount of time just making sure that the data model is right because there's just so many things that we want to make sure we get on with the correct thing. Cool. So I'm now going to go back to the overview. And all of this looks good, generate the data model. So as soon as we say it looks good, this is where it's actually going to create the tables. Up to this point, it's all sort of been in memory. I'm going to go hit looks good. And then it's going to can move on to the technology itself. So basically, it's come up with some ideas here. Training Planning Manager, which is a model-driven app. That's cool. It's created the idea of a My Training Session site, some Power Automate flows. That's all cool. It's created an agent. That's neat. And another model-driven app for an ALM system console. That's interesting. I'm just going to leave that here for now. Kind of an interesting concept. So we have some of this technology here. That's all really cool. And again, I can go through and iterate on that and then basically say, yep, looks good. And it tells me my tables have been saved, and to create and customize object, just hover over it and say create. So it's created my tables, but it hasn't yet created my apps or any of these other things. So what I'm going to do first is the Training Planner Manager app, the model-driven app. That's good. I'm just going to hover over that. I'm going to hit create. Before I do, I kind of want to save my progress. So I'm going to hit the save button here. And basically, it's making sure that anything is saved to the solution, my workout planner. Let's just hit save here. I think most of it's already been saved. It's saving all of that. So this will be in the solution itself. As part of this, this is all good. And then that's done. And now what I want to do, let's just start creating our apps. So once I've done this, this is now going to navigate me away into some of the other app creation things. So at this point, it is creating the model-driven app. It's going to launch that app designer that we've all probably, know and love. And from here, let's see what it did. It's coming up. So it's basically going to do the regular, views and forms and that type of thing. So here we have, my side panel. Of course, on my screen here, I've got it, the resolution a little bit high for you guys, but if I kind of zoom out, we do see our side panel here. Notice it also did icons, not puzzle pieces. That's critically important because there are certain people that will criticize me for not putting icons. So again, those are there. That's pretty cool. And then what we can do too is we also see we have the user roles here. So it actually did create a user role. That's pretty cool. So all the different pages it did create. So it also gives me some information here about the particular things it created. Now, if I wanted to continue on and continue to work on this, that's all fine as well. I can do add page here. And then I could add things like generative pages. If you've not tried generative pages yet, definitely go in and try it. I do believe it's only on US-based environments, but so spin up a US-based dev environment, try generative pages. It's like the coolest thing. You just describe what you want and it just goes off and builds it. We're not talking about that today. I just kind of calling that out. But of course, I could add other Dataverse tables. I could add web resources, navigation links, custom pages, if that's something you guys still do. So all of these different things that we would just build like a regular model-driven app. Once we're happy with everything, maybe I'll move things around a little bit. Maybe I look here under I want the workout log to be a little bit higher in the menu. I can move these things here in my tables that are in my app. Any kind of automation that I have tied in here, some business process flows, all that kind of fun stuff. Also any kind of agents. This will be the agent feed. I'm not sure if I have this turned on. This is a fairly new thing in your environment. Embedding those agents goes a little bit above and beyond today. I think probably there's going to be some sessions that will show that as part of this series. But anyways, we've created our model-driven app. I'm going to hit save and then publish. And of course, it's doing its thing. So now what we've done so far in the span of about 30 some minutes, we've collected requirements. we've generated a PRD, we've generated a prompt, we've created our Dataverse tables, we've now created our first model-driven app, all in 40 minutes. So, it's kind of amazing. Again, we didn't spend the time that we should to reiterate through everything, but just the fact we have something working that if we're talking to a client that has an idea, so I could go back to like my personal trainer, Chris, this afternoon and say, hey, look at this app that I built. Is this something you want to be using? What's your feedback on it? So it's pretty cool. I'm gonna just go back here to the, oops, that's why I saved it. I got out too far. I'm going back into my plans. Give me a chance to get a drink. So here I'm in the training planning system. I've got my tables here. Again, I can make some changes. Yeah, we have all that. It's gone through a lot of these agents. So I've created my model-driven app here. So that's been created. Now to create a Power Pages site. Oh, I'm in read-only mode. Why? Oh, I'm going to override. So it still thinks, here we go, because I had this open here. So again, that sort of helps. I've gone through, and what I can now do is create a site. So what this is going to do, this is going to launch the Power Pages, the ability to create that site. Now, this isn't as powerful as it probably could eventually be. Basically, I've given my site my name, the web address, and I'm going to hit next. And then basically it just sort of gives me a nice little layout. It looks pretty cool. I could add and remove pages, or I can go through and begin to change the prompt here. You see here the prompt is pretty weak. So again, we might revert back to our PRD document and feed in the bigger prompt. I'm just going to leave that for now. And it just gives me some pages, some sessions, workout logs. Now, as much as this looks cool, I'm just going to select all of these. Basically, it's going to create the pages for you. It's not going to tie it in to the web or the forms or views that you normally do on a Power Pages site, but at least gives you a little bit of a template to set this up. So we'll kind of let that churn through a minute. So what I mean by that is the benefit of Power Pages is it is a portal that can talk directly to Dataverse. You can have your external users. So in our case, the personal training clients, they can kind of come in, they can download, or they can take a look at their workout plan. They can update if they did it, how hard it was, any kind of feedback. But in order to do that, we're going to need to actually add the Dataverse table. So if I take a look at my sessions, it's given me a nice page. It's given me some nice graphics. But what I actually need to do is go through and do a lot of the work where I'm going to add I have to add the forms and the lists and those types of things. That's a whole other discussion. I actually do have some videos out there explaining how to go through that process. But the whole idea there is you still need to do quite a bit of work to configure your Power Pages site to get it to a point where it's kind of usable. Plan Designer only takes you so far with this. So that was excuse me, that was creating the Power Pages site. Now, we also have some Power Automates. So if I go through here and create my Power Automate, same thing, it's going to load Power Automate. Again, it's going to feed it a prompt. It's the same prompt that you would use if you're creating a brand new Power Automate flow. And we'll see how good this is, because if anybody's used this before, you know that this isn't necessarily the strongest Copilot in the mix. But it actually did kind of put in it actually put in a decent prompt here. I'm actually kind of surprised. It's given me a suggested flow, a trigger, when the row is modified, the different actions for each. Again, I'd want to go through and make sure that this made sense. And reiterate a little bit, but I'm just going to keep it and continue for now. Review your connected apps and services. So again, I just want to connect to Dataverse. It is connecting through my login. Best practice, we don't have time really to get into it today, but I would create a new connection reference. I would use a service principal specifically with Dataverse. There's some good content out there how to do this. You can actually do this in a terminal window and get all this generated, assuming that you have the appropriate administrator permissions. The reason why you want to use a service principal and a connection reference for something like Dataverse is a couple things. Basically, for security, you want to have that service principal and you could put the requirements on that. Now, if I just left it as my name, which I probably could, when my password expires, then this eventually is going to break, or even worse. And I'm not saying this has happened to me, but let's just say a friend of mine created a whole bunch of Power Automate flows for a client. Project was done, they were happy, flows are running. My friend went to a different project, and about 3 months later, the client's freaking out because all of a sudden their automations failed. What happened? Well, the IT guy went through, oh, this consultant's no longer working here. We're going to delete their account. They deleted the account. So, of course, the context of these Power Automate flows was gone. So, that's sort of the things to look out for. So, this is why service principles are an important thing. Again, that's just sort of like a little aside thing here. But for now, I'm just going to go through, create that flow. And it's going to create that Power Automate flow specifically for my whole solution. So, that's good. And I can go through, and already I'm seeing there's a few errors here that I need to fix. Can't find some certain tables and that type of thing. So it's not perfect. So this is where your job as a solution architect or a Power Platform maker, still AI is not going to take your job because it's going to try and it's going to do it very poorly. This to me is more of a helper more than anything else. This is just another tool. It still needs people like you and me to guide these tools to make it do the things that we want it to do. So just I'm not too worried about it. Anyways, I could go through and edit this flow, get it all working, and go through and begin to go through and add all of these other assets. Same thing now, if I go into the agent itself, it is going to launch Copilot Studio. Of course, this is the classic Microsoft sign-in thing, and it's going to ask me multiple times because it is a very short memory. Yep, you can tell I haven't logged in on this environment to Copilot Studio yet. But basically, it's the same thing. It's going through with the prompt, creating that agent, giving you the framework to work with terms of context of your business solution, and then you can continue to work with that. So I'm just going to let Copilot Studio kind of think about that for a little bit. We're going to go back into here. So we can go through all of this. That's great. And go through the different sites and different things like that. So basically, it's gone through these agents, it's gone through the requirements, the process agent, the data agent, the solution agent, and basically it's come and it's created a fairly, at this point, when it's all said and done, it'll be a good minimal viable product. Of course, we can begin to reiterate on that, but if you had to build all of these things from scratch, we'd probably still be working on probably the requirements gathering phase at this point. If we started it from fresh, we still might be creating, we might be on our second table by now if we're really efficient, but probably still be working on the first or second table, adding all those fields, adding the text widths, adding the relationships, creating the solution, all of this other stuff. So overall, the plan designer is a great way to streamline a lot of your workflow. It's definitely not going to do everything for you. It's only going to do the certain kind of create the frameworks or sort of create the foundations for some of these things. So finally, once we're all sort of done, what we can do, so we see here, it's if I take a look at the solution itself, it's going to add all of these things to the solution. So we see all our artifacts, our site, our tables, the agents, the apps, and then what we could do then is begin to deploy that to test environments once we're happy with how everything is working, either using pipelines or whatever other ALM solutions you're doing. The other thing we can do too here is going back to the system here. We're editing. I want to, they moved my cheese because there used to be a way to print like or generate, export to PDF. Oh, I probably have to save it first. So I'm just going to save the solution. So it's going to make sure it's saving everything that's been unsaved. And so of course that's grayed out as it's beginning to save everything. But the idea here is now that's done, I should now be able to export as PDF is not available. That's interesting. So I'm not sure why that's being grayed out. That worked before. but of course, being a demo, not everything has to be perfect. But the idea here is we could take that solution, we could export that as a PDF. I prefer if it would actually was sort of done in a markdown format that I could add into a wiki, into my Azure DevOps or something. But it is a way to document the solution that we built. The last thing I want to talk to you about before we kind of jump to questions is you're thinking that's great, Plan Designer is great, but I've already built my solution. I've already created something years ago, months ago, or we've taken over a client project. What can we do? So what you also can do with a plan is you have an existing solution. So here's the workout planner solution. Of course, this is the one we created. But what we can do here is we can create a plan and we can actually create it from a particular solution or even multiple solutions. So I picked the workout planner here, and what it's going to do is going to review that current solution and create a plan with a detailed analysis about all of these things. So if your boss has come to you and said, hey, can you document this solution because we have a new consultant starting, you can say, sure, it's going to take me 3 or 4 hours. Go in here, add it to the planner, create a plan, and then hand that off and just take a long lunch. I mean, don't tell them I said that. So basically, you can create plans from existing solutions. So I've talked kind of in a blur for the last 50 minutes or so, just to kind of reiterate everything we've done. We've gone through with our client, we've collected the requirements, we've collected artifacts. For in our case, it was the Excel spreadsheet. We also put in our system prompts. We used M365 Copilot Notebook. Again, you could use different tools that work best for you. Again, just be caution. I like using the M365 because it's got that guardrails, meaning those documents are going to stay within the context of my organization. I've gone through with the M365 Copilot. We've created a product requirements document. From that, we've created a prompt. And with that prompt, we fed that into Plan Designer. And then through Plan Designer, we were able to create a lot of the assets like the tables, the users, or the user personas, the process flows. We could create Canvas apps, Power Automate flows, starting things with Power Pages websites. And then ideally at the end, if that export to PDF was working, kind of create a documentation around that. And also a bit of sample data as well for you to play with. So that's sort of the demo. That's Plan Designer. I'll kind of open it to the floor if there's any questions. Maybe some. I didn't really see the chat as it was coming through. Was there any questions that I missed, or anything that people maybe I wanted to circle back and for me to see?
I just added a couple of comments, but there were no questions. Actually, there is one that just came through. Somebody just mentioning another way to aggregate requirements using like prompt coach as opposed to notebook.
Yep. Oh, there's
Um,
tons of tools, and I've actually built a few. If anybody's built GPTs, I've kind of put a few GPTs together as well in Chat GPT to kind of help with the process. But yeah, there's time, and of course, there's always new stuff every week as well to help with this.
yeah, no, this is amazing. I mean, as mentioned in the beginning of the call, I've been using Plan Designer. And mostly just the table creation, I think, is the advantage of Plan Designer. And also, if you
Yeah.
think of it, maybe model-driven apps, the way that it kind of lays out the attributes, the columns in views and forms, so it kind of saves time. Although you often go back to rearrange some of the work, but it is a lot better. I mean, just saving one field in Dataverse, it takes a long time. You know,
Yes.
just the operation of creating a column. So for it to do it all in one shot is amazing. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty good.
I just threw up on the screen. I basically wrote a blog last summer, kind of a little bit cheeky to get some hits on YouTube, but basically I kind of go through a very similar process to recreate dynamic CRM. And actually, it's got that YouTube video has gotten quite a few hits, but even then, it kind of follows that same process of taking the requirements and going through, but really, to me, the key thing is kind of like it's like anything. If we're going to go back to pre-AI times and we're talking about building solutions, it's the more you plan, the more you kind of put those requirements together. I know we're all makers, we're keen to build stuff, but sometimes we just need to take a break and kind of plan out the design, plan these things out. I'll just throw in the link. I think someone asked to put the link in here. I assume that's I have a blog post and a video. So the blog post itself or the video is embedded in the blog post here. So you can check that out along with the blog post as well. So if there's any other questions, folks should be able to reach me as well. But yeah, we still have a few minutes. If there's anybody else has any other questions on.
Yeah, there is one question as to selecting what assets you can create instead of the whole solution. Mala is posing that question. He referenced to flows and web resources. I don't think Plan Designer is providing web resource creation, but of the assets or artifacts that it suggests, you can pick and choose which components you want to create, right?
Yeah, yeah, it won't create things like plugins. It won't create like web resources. It doesn't create code apps yet, although I'm guessing that's probably coming eventually. Or like logic apps or some of those other things, but that's not to say you can't go back in later into that solution and add those things if it makes sense. Like, I mean, Power Automate's awesome, but it doesn't quite do everything. Um, so yeah, it gets you to a certain level, but at the end of the day, you still need to go in and add some of these other things. Um, yeah, like web resources, plugins. There's probably a whole whack of other things it doesn't do. Business rules it doesn't do. None of the client side JavaScript. Um, business process flows either. Classic workflows it doesn't do. It would be cool if they did, but it can only do so much.
Yeah. I just want to mention something before we close. Some of you may have seen some of the announcements on the vibing engineering or vibing a whole solution in a similar way that Nick presented today. If you try through this website, vibe.powerapps.com, there are just a couple of things that are different in terms of I don't know if I can call it the plan designer in Vibe or similar Vibe engineering solution. First one is the selection of the environment. It's down here instead of the top right. And then the other thing that I noticed is that when you create a plan through Vibe, it saves the data models without waiting for you to decide. And
Yeah.
so be on the lookout there if you try this.
Yeah. So the good question there, what is the purpose of vibe.powerapps.com and when would you use that instead of the one you showed us? Great question. So I wouldn't use vibe.powerapps for anything production today. I have played with it. I've created a few little apps testing things out. What vibe.powerapps is really is a front end to create something called code power apps. And what we mean by code power apps is basically is they're using AI tools, or if you really want, you could go from ground up, is to create a system based on the React component framework and TypeScript. You build it. This is very much a pro code approach to building an app. The benefit of code apps is it will host it within the concept of Power Apps. So it takes care of things like security, authentication, the container that you're hosting it in. Of course, those, use those connectors like to Dataverse or even some of the other connectors. So what we're basically showing with Plan Designer, it's building those traditional model-driven apps, those traditional Canvas apps. And in terms of when to use a code app versus a model-driven app, model-driven apps are very configurable. Makers can go in and add tables or add new forms and views. And if you looked at one model-driven app, you've seen them all. So it's very good from a training perspective. You can basically show the same type of app. If I train you on how to do a model-driven app, you could go to any company around the world. If they have model-driven power apps, you can navigate your way pretty good. Cool thing about code apps is it's almost pixel perfect. It can do everything that you want it to do. A pro developer can go in and manipulate the code. Now, you're probably saying, wait a minute, isn't that what Canvas apps are supposed to do? Absolutely. But I think what's going to happen is you're going to see Canvas apps sort of being phased out in favor of code apps in terms of that ultimate user experience. Now, I could be wrong, and don't get me wrong, I do love Canvas apps, but Canvas apps were designed at a time where we're still configuring everything, putting the plumbing together.
Yeah.
Now, with these AI tools, to me, I keep saying natural language is the purest form of low code. So it's going to be,
Mhm.
if you're a low code maker, these tools now are going to be, and like even I showed, I use my microphone. You're going to tell your computer what to build. Now, of course, that spins up a whole bunch of other questions that we could probably talk for another hour on about. Is it secure? Is it performant? Is the code that we're creating is somehow is there going to be able to inject bugs or that kind of thing? How's that going to work? So, of course, these are questions we're constantly talking about and debating in terms of how this goes. But I think it's a pretty exciting time to be in this thing. Not so much like it's changing. So my job is changing. What used to take me weeks before is now taking me days or hours with these tools. I'm essentially doing the same thing. I still need to apply my knowledge, my skill, my experience, but my end result is going for, yeah. Someone says I don't like Canvas apps at all, too much configuration. Yeah, I'm with you, Franzolia. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Canvas apps either. It's sort of like I'm a big model driven apps fan. I like it. It's got the side panels, got the forms of views, and if I want to do something fancy, then I can pop into generative pages right now and tell it what to make for me. So cool.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And sorry to drag you into this one, but I think things are changing so fast. It was probably important to touch these subjects as well. Nick, thank you so much for your time. I threw some of your links here in the chat. People, please follow Nick. Last year, I think LinkedIn started with the whole thing around what was the person, the most influential person in your network, or the person that you interacted the most. I got Nick. I've been watching you and learning a lot. So thank you so much, Nick. And yeah, we'll see you in a month, and
Yeah.
we'll see the rest of the crew next week. All
Yeah.
right,
Hopefully see some of these folks in Vancouver.
for sure.
All righty.
All right,
Thanks,
take care.
Victor.
Have a
Oh,
good
there's
one.
a
Thank
yeah.
you.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.